You spin me right round, baby, right round, like a panorama, right round. You spin me right round, baby, right round, like a panorama, right round. In today's video, we'll be looking at every single method that we know to create some stunning panoramas on the Osmo. From the simple selfie panorama to the full 360-degree panorama, panoramas are everywhere these days. Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, etc, etc, etc.
So in this video, I'm going to cover how to create some stunning panoramas using the Osmo. So what we're going to cover in this particular tutorial, first of all, I'm going to skim over some panorama basics. Next, we're going to look at the different options for panoramas as they apply to the Osmo. And then we're going to look at some typical uses for panoramas. I'm going to take you through some of the challenges and obstacles that I've been facing when I've tried to create these panoramas using some of these methods. And by no means am I an expert. I mean, I'm also learning every day. This is what makes this so exciting, because you interact with people who are much more advanced and they help you along. And I'll cover all of this stuff and how you can get better at panoramas and seek help when you get stuck, because that's how I've got to the stage that I'm at. And lastly, I'm going to end it all with a conclusion and then a specific call to action, so something for you to do right at the end. So stay tuned and let's get stuck into this topic. So the first thing is, let's go through panorama basics. So basically, panoramas, regardless of which camera you're using, it's basically a means of stitching together images that you've taken in some kind of orientation to create one panoramic image. I mean, that's as simple as it gets. And the way it works is, obviously it relies on what are called control points. Control points are parts of images on one that this stitching software typically can recognize the same control point on another image, and thereby align those control points in such a way that they are, you know, aligned perfect. Let's look at some panorama file formats. So these are formats that you typically take your images in. You could use raw images, JPEGs, TIFF, PNG. Although your end product, your end panorama is likely to be a JPEG, a TIFF, or a PNG file format. And then the last thing I'll just cover very briefly is the kind of panoramas that I'm going to cover in this tutorial are three basic types. First one is a 180 degree, where your field of view is 180 degrees, as this diagram illustrates. Second type is going to be a 360 degree panorama. Again, field of view is 360. And then the third type is going to be kind of a combination of the two. So 360 degrees in this orientation and 180 degrees in this orientation. And if you can imagine, this is kind of like typically how you can represent how a panorama could end up looking like, almost like a spherical image, going 180 degrees in this axis as well as 360 degrees in that axis. So let's start going through what options you have at your disposal when you've got the Osmo. So the first option is the DJI option, and we're going to look at that in a little bit of detail. Then there is one method I'm going to show you by a website called Dermandar. I don't know how to pronounce that. I'm just calling it Dermandar. And the next app is an app called Huggin. When I say app, it could refer to software, just the same. It's basically the software that you're using to stitch together panorama. Then the next one is called PTGui. Then the last one I'll cover is AutoPano. So these are just 5 options there are, but there's many more that you can use even with your Osmo. But for the purposes of, you know, trying to limit this video to a short kind of video, I'm only going to cover these 5 methods here. And it's also worth noting that these last two, PTGui and AutoPano, they work in conjunction with an additional app which I'm going to cover as well, which is called Dronepan. And it's a fantastic app that I discovered as well. So we're going to have a quick look at that. And most of what I'm going to talk about is really try to set you up on a journey that you can discover for yourself what is possible with the Osmo when it comes to panoramas. So the DJI option is really as straightforward as it gets. So you want to make sure you're in the camera mode. And then within the camera mode, you select the pano mode. And when you select the pano mode, you then get three options to choose from: the 180-degree front, 180-degree selfie, or the full 360-degree panorama mode. And once you've selected the mode, all you then have to do is you set up your Osmo in a safe and secure location, free from any kind of movement if you can avoid that. So typically use a monopod or a tripod, make sure it's mounted firmly, and then you frame your shot for whatever is the subject that you want to shoot for your panorama. I also recommend that you do all of this in manual mode. So when you're in manual mode, you've got control of the ISO, and I recommend you bring the ISO as low as it can possibly go in the conditions, in the light conditions that you're in. And also, you know, in this instance, because we're not shooting a video, we're shooting images, you can as much use your shutter speed to compensate for the proper exposure without really worrying too much about obeying that exposure rule that we talked about, because this is not a video, this is a still image. If you use auto mode, the chances are the exposure will be different from image to image, and your panorama will look like a mosaic. Then all you have to do is just hit the shutter button, and then the Osmo starts taking the images. In the case of the 180-degree pano modes, the Osmo takes 5 images, and then in the case of the 360, it takes a total of 8 images. The images that have been taken by the Osmo are stitched in the phone itself, so you're making use of the stitching engine, if I can call it that, the stitching engine of the mobile phone, whether you've got an Android phone or iOS. The stitching is done by the phone itself to create a 180 or a 360-degree pano that you can then download directly from the phone itself, and then you're free to use it for whatever purpose you want to use it for. The 5 or 8 photos that would have been taken in one of these modes, you can access the original of those images. The one downside is the stitched panorama that you get at the end of this is a low resolution panorama. Let's move on to the next one, which is actually the Dermandar. I might be butchering that pronunciation, I'm sorry if I am, but here's how it works. So it works with images that you can access on your SD card, so you get the high resolution images that have already been used for any one of your panoramas that you've taken with the Osmo. And then what you want to do is you head on over to the Dermandar site, but what I've done is I've created a shortcut on the Osmo Tips website. So if you want something easy to remember, I mean, you know us as Osmo Tips, osmotips.com/panorama. This will land you on a page like this. So this is what it looks like on our site, but you're more than welcome to go to the original site, and you can use the app from this site. So first of all, you've got two options. You can make a 360 field of view or a wide angle panorama. So the difference between the two, from what I've just played around with, the 360 is obviously stitched from end to end, so it gives you a continuous 360 view, almost like as the shape here implies, a cylindrical shape, 360, full 360 axis, whereas a wide angle could contain the same images that I've made of that 360 image. The only difference is it's a typical panorama from end to end, where it's a very wide angle of view. All you do is you simply click this wide angle button, then you identify a folder where you've got your images. In this case, I've got these 5 images. Simply upload all the images, and then you get a status that this process is taking place, and after a while, this is the image that you get. So the 180 degrees starts from this edge and it goes all the way to this edge. Then the beauty about this method is what you can then do is you can then click this gear icon, and then you can choose to save your image. So it generates that image, so you get your full 180 degree equirectangular. It's just a fancy name for this style of panorama. And then you can obviously choose to save it in any location. I've already saved this in a different folder, so I'm not gonna save it now. Let's do that again, and this time let's choose a 360-degree view, and I'm going to choose a different folder that I know contains the 8 images that I used with the Osmo to create my 360 panorama. Click open to upload those images, and then again you have to wait whilst the panorama is being processed. And now we get the full 360 view, which is continuously stitched, which is stitched in such a way that it gives you a continuous 360 rotation around this axis, as you can see. Now let's try and see if we can download this. Save as large image. So again, it stitches that, and then it gives you an equirectangular panorama of very high resolution, which you can then save to a location on your computer, and then use that high resolution for purposes that need high resolution panoramas. So I'm not going to save that because I already saved a similar image moments ago, and I'm just going to go to that folder now just to show you the difference between what you get from the phone. So I've got 2 images here. This is the panorama that was stitched in phone, and then I'm going to open this one. Let's bring that down. This is the panorama that was created via this method. Now they both look similar now because obviously they've been compressed to fit in this shape, but if we just quickly go to the inspector here to look at the details of each image, you see this Dermandar image has got an image size of 11,000, almost 12,000 pixels by 1,300 pixels, so that's pretty large. 2.9, almost 3 megabytes in size. By comparison, this one that came from the phone is only, and I say only with a bit of a caveat there, 3.6 kilopixels, 3,600 pixels by 450 pixels, and almost half a meg in size here. But the real difference will come in if you kind of, let's try and zoom in quite a lot into this first image. Notice how we're getting pixelation there. Let's try and do the same kind of zoom on this image here. Let's get it to more or less the same kind of size, maybe just a little bit more. I'm looking at that lamp post there and that one, so you can see when you compare these two that are almost, you know, been magnified to the same extent. I mean, just look at pixelation at the edge of that roof, and the same thing here. So obviously you get much better quality from using this Dermandar method. That's this method. So feel free to play around with it. Either go to our website or go to the original Dermandar site, as I mentioned. So let's look at some of the pros. Obviously I've just mentioned that getting a higher resolution panel, and it's also 100% free, so that's a definite plus right there. The fact that is, you know, you've got to take your photos out of the SD card and do an additional step before you can access your panorama can be seen as a little bit of a con. Now the next method I want to just mention, and I'm not going to cover it because it's very similar to the one that I've just shown you now, and what I want to do is maybe just direct you to where you could access this particular app or this particular software. It's called Hugin or Hugin, I don't know how you pronounce that, but it kind of looks like this. You can download it right here. I'm not gonna do that, but you know, from what I've tested, it works in a very similar manner to the method that I've just shown. It's obviously got a little bit more bells and whistles. But now the next method, as I mentioned, makes use of this Dronepan app, which I'm quickly going to explain how this app works. I got this app from this website here. I think these guys are doing a wonderful job. It's a free app from the App Store. I'm not too sure if it's on the Android system as yet. Now we're going to look at this app called the Dronepan. Dronepan assists you in taking several photos. It automatically detects that you're connected to the Osmo. In this case, you can see it's already feeding back the battery information. Now before we actually do anything, I just want to go through to the settings mode by hitting that gear icon. So this app, really very clever app, what it does, it automatically takes the number of photos required to stitch together a perfect 360 degree by 180 degree photo that you can upload to Facebook and make use of Facebook's 360 photo feature, which allows you to automatically pan 360-degree photos. So you've got in the first row here, you select, you know, the delay time, if any. Now, I've currently just got it on 5 seconds because I'm not really gonna, you know, jump out the way for the purpose of this video. But if you wanted to maybe give yourself room to move out the way before the panel starts, you could choose maybe 15 seconds, 20 or 30, but I'm gonna leave it on 5 seconds here. The next thing is you choose your number of photos. I typically leave it on 6 photos. So this should give me a total of 25 photos. The next 2 settings are really, again, I don't touch at all. Number of rows is 3 rows, so it's gonna so what this app does is it automatically takes photos in 3 different rows. So it adjusts the pitch and the pan automatically to ensure that it takes the right number of photos. And the advice we're getting on this app is by default 3 works well for the X3, which is what we're currently using. Sky roll, this is for when you've got a drone, so this doesn't apply to us. And when you're happy with that, you just simply hit save. And then you're ready to take your 25 photos. So we should get a count here of how many photos we're doing. And all you do is you hit this start button and it starts the panel, and you just sit and wait. So once you have your images, you want to open PTGui, and the version that I've got is a trial version. All the images that are going to come from here are going to be watermarked. All you do is you load your images. So in this case, I'm going to select these images that are shot recently. Click open. What's important from what I've understood is to make sure that the EXIF data from the camera, this is basically all the kind of like metadata that relates to the camera that was used, the kind of shot that was taken. Make sure PTGui recognizes what the focal length and the focal length multiply. In this case, it's automatically detected these. So if you're using the Osmo, which is what we're using, it's going to do the same thing. And then all you have to do is click this align images button here, and then it does its magic in the background. So it's looking for those control points. You see that it's generating control points, aligning the control points. And I think I got a warning there that there's something funky that didn't happen. So it's telling you here that PTGui was unable to detect control points for some of the images, that you need to add a few control points by hand, and you need to go to the control point assistant for that. So it says image 24 does not have any control points. So this is image 24. For the purpose of the demonstration, I'm going to try and estimate that this cloud point here is similar to that one there. So that's my control point. And just because I want to proceed with this, I'm going to leave it at that. If I go back to the project assistant, it's prompting that you should optimize the project. So I'm going to click that optimize button. And then it gives you a message here that optimize the panorama, blah, 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 blah. This is not bad, but because it's in red, I think there's something not quite funky that it likes, but I'm simply going to ignore that. Click OK. And now we're ready to create our panorama. And all you do is you click this button here to create the panorama. You can click this button here to set the optimum size, which currently we've got is 14,000 by 7,000 pixels. That sounds about right. You can choose where you want to save the panorama. In this case, I'm simply going to, and then when you're ready, you simply hit create panorama. Now this process might take a while, so I'm just going to pause this video at this stage and then come back when it's close to completion. So I think that's done now. So we're going to head over to this folder here, and that's the image that we've just created here. Now I haven't done any editing of or cropping at all. I'm simply showing you the method. Obviously these little specks you see, this is the watermark, but there we go. This is our 360 by 180 degree panorama. So it doesn't look like much in this kind of manner, but we want to bring it into Facebook, because Facebook has got now this new feature, this new 360 degree feature, that it recognizes photos that are stitched in this kind of panorama fashion and offers the full 360 treatment, if I can call it that. So let's go over to Facebook. So I'm simply going to upload a photo, and then we want to select this panorama that we've just created. Click open, And then the moment it starts uploading to YouTube, it recognizes that this is a 360 photo, as you can see there. You can then publish this. But here's the beauty of the 360. This is what you can then do using this method. So you can go up and down. This black part that we're seeing here, this is what is known as nadir or something like that. This is a portion that you can, if you're familiar with photo editing program, you can replace this nadir portion, which is looking like this black hexagonal shape here, with an image that looks like the grass here, you know, but that's for another tutorial video altogether. I cannot possibly cover all of that and try and squeeze it into 30 minutes. 30 minutes is already quite a long time for a video. And because all the EXIF and XML data is recognized by the Facebook app, you immediately get the full 360 treatment of your image. That's the beauty about using an app such as PTGui. Obviously, one downfall is it's got additional steps, and another drawback is the fact that you have to pay to get the full license. So if you want to get rid of the watermark, it's going to cost you a few dollars. The AutoPano app is very similar to the one that I've just shown you, so I'm simply going to just rush through it. This is a trial version, blah 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 blah. Okay, we know that. And all you do here, you select your images. This time let's go to a different folder. These images were all taken using the Dronepan app. Click upload or open. So it's detected all the EXIF data from these images. The next thing you do is you click go. So it's matching all the control points, all the key points and so on. Now it's correcting for lens distortion and things like that. All this is happening in real time, so it's a really fast process. Maybe a couple of minutes at most. And then you get again a very similar kind of panel that we've just seen. You could edit it. In this case I want to try like cropping. And I'm simply going to hit the auto crop feature. And then if you're happy with this cropping, you click render. It'll give you options of width and height. You can adjust those if you wish. Format of the file, JPEG. You could have chosen TIFF or PNG. I'm simply going to leave it on JPEG. And a few other details. Where you want the output to go to. So I'm simply going to choose the same folder that contains images. Click open. And then with these selected, you simply click render. So it's now rendering the cropped panorama. So this will take a few minutes. So we'll be back when it's done. Okay, now it's done. So if we open that, you can see this one I've cropped most of that nadir, which is at the bottom section here. And again, it's going to be watermarked because I'm using a trial version. But let's just use this again as another example to bring it into Facebook again. We're going to forget about this one. I'm going to upload a new one. This time, this is the image. Click open. And then as well, it recognizes that it's a 360 photo. So this is the beauty about using Facebook for 360 by 180 panoramas. It just works beautifully. When you're ready, publish that. And again, you've got the ability to pan as much as you wish. Up, down, up, down. We've got who's this guy here? Oh, okay. So notice here, I don't know what happened there. We've got much smaller footprint of the nadir because we've tried to crop. But you know, the experts will tell you, you know, this is very easy to create a ground shot and have that merged in the photo so that it's seamless. And if you want, you can view it in full mode. But that's a full 360 pano right here. It's just a pity that it's heavily watermarked, but I think you get the idea. Now let me quickly move over to some typical uses for panoramas that you can take with the Osmo. I mean, the traditional ones have always been real estate and architecture and things like that. But now, increasingly now, because of the advent of social media, we're now finding panoramas are great type of content for your social media. If that is something that you're using, whether for personal use, for business use, for whatever use. So panoramas are fantastic pieces of content that you can easily share with your audience, with your family, with your friends. They're great for that. Facebook, the new Facebook 360 feature that I've just shown you, again, is opening some great avenues into how you can display images and places that you visit and stuff like that. So really great feature. You can also use panoramas as a high resolution image asset in video editing. So I'll just show you briefly what that means. And then what you can do is you can simply put, if you like, can come to the beginning of where this photo starts, put a keyframe for the position, move it down maybe a couple of seconds down, 3, 4, 5 seconds, something like that, put another keyframe, and then change the position. And then you've got this super pan motion that you've just created with a panel, but in video mode. And then lastly, you could also use it in virtual reality workflows. Which leads me to challenges and obstacles that I faced when testing out these methods. And remember, I'm saying I'm still very early in my journey on panoramas, but that's something I'm willing to continue. And I'll show you how I want to continue doing that in a moment. So first of all, yeah, that nadir and zenith. Zenith is actually the upper part. Sometimes you don't get coverage of the sky part. But when you use the drone pan does take an image in the zenith direction, so that's great. But patching those up could prove to be a challenge if you're not glued up with Photoshop and those kind of editing programs. I've faced some Wi-Fi issues, again, touching on the last week's video. I was saying one of the most frustrating things is when you lose signal to the Osmo via the Wi-Fi. And in this case, it actually impacts the Dronepan app, and it dropped some images. So I was finding on some attempts it was only taking 10 out of 25 photos, and then it stops right there. And then when I check closely, it's the Wi-Fi that would have dropped that possibly caused that. So hopefully these are issues that can be addressed in upcoming editions of both the Dronepan app as well as a firmware for the Osmo. Facebook resolution, the maximum image resolution that you can upload to Facebook is currently 41,000 pixels in total, and not more than 31 pixels in any one direction. So if you want those super high resolution 360 by 180 degree panoramas, Facebook currently doesn't allow you to upload those, but I'm sure this limitation will be lifted soon. I also had issues with aspect ratio of when I used the Hugging method, and by that I mean, you see how that truck looks squashed. It should actually look like this. That's how it should look like in real life. And then the last challenge I faced is sometimes you don't have any, or you don't have enough control points, as you saw me there, and this can be quite frustrating to try and get those control points, especially when there's no two images that seem to be matching up. So the conclusion and call to action that I'll leave you with is, I think panoramas on the Osmo is a great way to get started with another different way of using your Osmo, still images as opposed to video, which is what we've been talking about. It's fun. It's definitely growing, and there's more and more uses that you will definitely come up with for your panoramas. The list of methods that I've just gone through is not exhaustive by any means. There are so many other methods that you could use, so many apps, so much more software to use. I just touch on the ones that I've seen referenced in places. The challenges and obstacles that I've just gone through, a lot of them are quite easy to overcome, to be fair, and with practice I think I'll get better at this. And so but obviously some things need to be improved, like the Wi-Fi thing. That's really is a bit of a bother. I would definitely recommend that you download the Dronepan app. I mean, the guys behind that app are really doing great things. It's a free app, and there's nothing to stop you from doing that. And then once you have that app, I definitely highly recommend that you join this Dronepan community. I mean, I've had so many of my questions answered by the people in this community. They're just more than happy to help. It's a fantastic place to grow your knowledge about panoramas and Osmo in general. It's definitely a great community, so I highly recommend that you join this group, and also, like I said, download the app.
So we hope you guys found that video useful. If you have any other methods that we haven't covered in this video, we'd love to hear from you guys. And remember, sharing is caring. Now, the news we've all been waiting for. The winner of last week's Most Helpful Award is Bobstar 986. Congratulations, dude. Anyway, you can read about his super helpful tip in the comments of the video. The most annoying things about the Osmo. Remember that video? I surely do. Till next time, take care, and don't forget your sunscreen and your shades. Wait, it's not working. Oh, it doesn't work this time. Oh, and your Osmo, of course. Go out there and create some epic panoramas. Adios, amigos! Audio Jungle.